Hey, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Mafia Meta. Today we have our guests Shindigs and Unctious, who are here to talk about the player meta and what goes on with that. So, without further ado, take us away, guys.
Go ahead, Unctious.
All right, what up, dudes? So we're going to talk about some of the players and kind of like how they play and what we kind of think about how they interact in a game and what it all means overall. So I have a picture up of a bunch of the players here. So I think it might be smartest to start with some of the strongest players, right? Talk about how they play, what we think about them.
Did you link it in the chat? I'm not seeing it right now.
Oh no! I have a picture up on my screen. I can.
Okay.
I'm just going to go through them. All right.
Okay,
so,
that's fine. Yeah, don't worry about it.
Mango's arguably one of the best players that we have, right?
Yeah.
In the game. So what do you think about Mango? How he plays? What is his like MO when he goes into a game?
Yeah, well, before we start off, I just want to say that Mango will not be joining us this week. He's at the International 3 at the moment, so it'll be really interesting dynamic because he's a leader. You know,
he's a staple too. Like he's a staple every week.
If he's town, he knows what he wants, and he can convince the town to form a circle around him. So I feel like Mango circles are really dangerous for Mafia because last week Mango actually had an overwhelming majority. When I was thinking about it actually earlier today, it kind of felt like Congress, right? Like Mango actually had an insane majority last week that whatever Mango wanted, Mango could get. So when I was Mafia last week, I felt like I really had to disrupt that circle that he was forming around himself. I mean, there were dissenting opinions. It's not like Mango dominates each time, but it seems like he always gets a good majority or a good team around him. That even though if they're not the majority, people listen to them, and it's very, very scary. So it makes him a very scary Mafia player too, because people will still circle around him as Mafia, especially in very, very uncertain situations.
Actually, I want to kind of echo that. Like,
sorry,
there's two sides to every coin, right? As Mafia, that's scary because if you know that Mango's not Mafia, he's gonna be able to like make this ultimate uprising against you, and he's a good enough player that his reads are often like stellar. His reads are often off the charts.
They're respected.
Yeah, they're respected. But like I said, there's two sides to every coin. As a town member, that's scary because you knowing that about Mango, you don't really know when to trust him and when not to trust him because you know that he's such a strong player all the time. So if he's that respected and you respect him that much, it's possible to kind of give somebody too much respect because when they're Mafia, they'll fuck you over that much harder if you're not if you're not cautious of it.
Yeah, and I don't want to say Mango's impenetrable because I feel like the past couple of games we've had within, let's say, the past 3 weeks, Mango's always drawn suspicion on him for just being Mango. Like, why is Mango still alive? Right. Is pretty much the thing. And like that's when you're a good player and you're alive late into the game, that's basically auto suspicion. That's just the fault of not a fault, but like that's the role of being a good player is people will always be suspicious of you. But Mango definitely fulfills that role because late into the game, Mafia enjoys leaving him alive because they feel like he is a strong player. But personally, when I leave Mango alive, I feel like I can at least try to dissuade the rest of the town to go against Mango because the fact that he's alive later in the game can really work against him if you spin the coins just right. Is that even a metaphor? Yeah.
It's almost worth noting, kind of what I think Thundertoss brought up last time, is that like, where was I going with this? Thundertoss kind of said something about this situation, about kind of trusting somebody too much. I don't remember what it is off the top of my head, but because I forgot, we're going to keep going. We're going to go on to the next person. In all seriousness, I've been drinking a little bit.
Let's do it. Yeah, that's fine. Let's keep these player profiles.
Okay, let's do Thundertoss because he's super strong too. He's kind of well respected.
Yeah, I hope this doesn't come off. So I don't really mean to like critique every player, but since we're going through these player profiles, Thundertoss is can be a very intimidating town player because he can always poke the right questions. But I disagree with his play, and sometimes I feel like he drags the day on for way too long, in my opinion. And that's a personal preference for me. A lot of people feel like that's very investigative and very cool, but oftentimes during the last couple of games I played with him, I'm like, okay, I'm not really so sure about how he's dragging this on. I feel like it's a bit irrelevant. And also I feel like I could use that against him if I was Mafia or if I want to pin something on him as saying you're being distracting or you're being a detriment to town. Because I feel the current meta, or not the current meta, but like just the way people are playing at the moment is if you're Mafia, it's easy. You can be like Rob, where people ask you to defend, and you're like, okay, you give a really good town read, but at the same time, I feel like a lot of things we say, we can make things up on the spot pretty easily and have them be tangible. So I feel like that plays into to the whole meta thing as well, right at the moment.
Yeah, and what's cool about Thunder Toss is that like one of the scariest things about him is that he is always smooth no matter what he's doing. Whether he's Mafia or whether he's Town, he maintains his regular personality, which is just smooth as fuck at all times. Like he doesn't care what you think, really. Yeah. You know, like he's doing his thing. So when he's Mafia and he's about to get lynched and he just says, "I'm cop," you're like, well, how do I disagree with that? Like I can't do anything about that. Like there's no way to tell his lying, at least for me, when it comes to reading Thunder Toss, there's no way to tell his lying from his truth telling, which means that you purely have to do things theoretically. You purely have to look at it the same way that like Carlton does or the way that Peter does, which is, hey, this guy's been agreeing with these people for the past couple rounds, but suddenly he's not doing that anymore, and that's suspicious. So what's really cool about Thunder Toss is that you can't get a good read off of him, just kind of body language style, but you really need to look at what he's doing and the actions that he's taking from kind of an objective point of view. At least
I feel like Thunder Toss is definitely one of those players that he's someone you want to take a lot of notes on, because he's someone that he's not going to slip up too much. Like it's really going to be like looking at his entire play through the entire game, and it's crazy what he can get away with too. So yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. He's a super strong player. He actually died the first couple nights before first night, and I think that's a really good kill because he's actually playing pretty spectacular before he started getting killed a lot.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. He's a super strong player. No matter what team he's on, he's strong. So if you're Mafia and you know that he's not, you want him out of the game super fast because he has Mafia down to a science, is what it seems like. And that's not the case for a lot of these other players that we're going to move on to. So
but we're just going to go through as many as we can, I think.
Do you want to talk about Ryan, MLG Ryan?
Yeah, MLG Ryan is a very interesting case because he's one of the people, kind of like Thunder Toss, which I was about to say, who can get away with being quiet. Because when you talk to them, they're kind of like Rob, where it's like, oh, they'll always make a good read or something off the spot. I noticed Ryan last week because I was observing Ryan because he was Mafia with me, and I was really scared of what he was going to do. And he actually came out being very discussive, like really early on in the game. So I think his play is starting to change. But again, similar to Mango, a very scary Mafia player because he reads Town almost 90% of the time. But in my personal hypothesis against him is, if he's Mafia, I feel like the Town discussions go on for much longer than they need to be, and people always bounce off Ryan, like, Ryan, what do you think about this? Ryan, what do you think about that? And then when he's pinged, he always tries to bring back obvious statements about the Town. So like what he contributes is not as high level as it usually is, and I think Town should make note of that. Like, be sure, check out the contributions Ryan is making. Read really deep into them, because if they're not up to your standard, I think that's enough to draw suspicion on Ryan, because there's very little to come off of.
Actually, that's something that I wanted to bring up. Okay, so what I wanted to say earlier was that Thunder Toss brought up last week was that even if somebody's playing as Mafia, the coolest thing about this game is that you have to remember that although you're in it for yourself, you have to remember that Mafia or not, people need to be playing kind of on your team. Like even Mafia needs to be playing pro Town. You're not in it alone. No matter who's Town or who's Mafia, you can rely on yourself to a certain extent, but you also have to rely on the fact that if anyone's making obviously pro Mafia moves, then they're going to be out in an instant. So that's what I kind of wanted to bring back, and I think that's super important when you're talking about Ryan, because similarly, he doesn't give off super like. You can't really look at him and see what he reads because he's just like deadpan all the time. Yeah. Like Ryan's serious face and his happy face are like the same face. Yeah. I'm not sure he has feelings. Yeah. I don't know if we're certain.
The thing about Ryan and Mango are two people that will always make you feel bad for lynching them. Even if the defense makes no sense at all, like the way that they play and the way that they interact with the game, it's like, well, I'm never 100% sure that I'm lynching a Mafia unless a cop like checked them. I mean, obviously that goes with any case, but especially these guys, it's like when you put your hand up to kill Mango or Ryan, it's always like, I know it's the decision I have to make right now, but I still don't feel about it. So it's like something you have to really push off like your biases for, and just be like, I'm just gonna do it and not think about the consequences, because they can make you feel really guilty.
All right, we need to start whipping through people because we got 15 minutes left. I want to bring up Eric. Because I know he might not have been around that long, but I feel like Eric has some of the best reads I've ever seen out of anybody. I think he's super strong at reading people.
I only started noticing that last week, but yeah, sorry, continue. Like, you're right. His reads have been spot on lately. Like, his play is just being really stellar at the moment.
I don't even know how it happens. I don't know what he looks for. I don't know what happens in his head. I'd like to ask him about it. It'd be cool if we could like get him in the post game analysis to try to figure it out. But what's incredible about Eric is that like despite the fact that he always comes off as suspicious, actually, you know what? He always seems really genuine. Now that I think about it,
Yeah.
no matter what, he seems super genuine, and I think that's something to be said. Like there are certain players who always come off as suspicious. Like I'm always suspicious of Thundertoss. I'm always suspicious of Rob. No matter what, Eric comes off as just like I really want to help the town win.
Yeah.
Like no matter what.
Yeah. Yeah, like Eric, I feel like is going to his play is going to shift, or like his reputation is going to shift within the group really soon. In which when he starts saying stuff, like people aren't going to really talk over him as much anymore because they've seen his reads. The past couple of weeks have been very very good. I think let's do one more player and then maybe start taking questions from the chat, or like one or two more players, and let's do questions. So let's go to the next one. So Eric is going to be fabulous, I feel, in the next couple of games.
Ribo is always around. I'd like to talk about Ribo because I know he's almost always around.
He gets upset fairly easily.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I feel like everyone has a good read on Ribo when he's Mafia, but I personally don't. Like he's a very hard read for me because I feel like he's the same way either way. And I'm not saying that's more pro town or pro Mafia. He's just like Ribo constantly. At least in my perspective. I don't know if you have any insights on how to read Ribo as Mafia.
I don't, because he's always uncertain. That's the thing about him. Like a lot of players, some players like Mango, for instance, project like, here's how I feel about this player perfectly. I think this person's Mafia. I think this person's town. Ribo tends to stay in the middle, and then he like shoes to one side. He kind of says, all right, I think this, I'm really reading Mafia on this person, but he never commits to anything, which makes it really difficult because when he's town, he's not committal. When he's Mafia, he's non-committal, which makes it so that like you just always get this idea of I don't really know who this guy's allied with.
Yeah, I need to chew on his play maybe like for one more week to really like. I've never thought about his play as being like a non-committal person through the entire game, but it's a very interesting like thought experiment. It's like if you were to play like this consistently, which Ribo has, how does that really affect your own play with respect to town?
Right.
Next
Alan, real quick, because people were asking about Alan.
Right.
I don't know how to read Alan. I want Alan to be lynched always.
Yeah, I'm actually at the position I would still lynch Alan like first night or two just to be okay. He's trying to talk more, which is fine, and he had the buffer of new people the past 2 weeks. But personally, I would lynch Alan the first 2 nights for policy lynching. I
think he's too much of a liability for me to want to keep him around at this point.
Yeah.
Like there are certain players like Carlton, for instance, who I think is a good person to talk about, but we won't do right now.
Yeah.
Carlton's kind of earned his ability to stay quiet in the beginning of the game because he's such a strong late game player. I'm not sure Alan has done that to the same extent. That being said, Alan's made some good calls when it's like 4 players left. You know, one of them's Mafia. Like he's made some good calls that way, but it's also like too much of a liability in my opinion because it's too unsure.
He's also, I feel last week he was definitely an anti-Mango player in the fact that he's always skeptical even about the most correct decisions. So that's actually a pretty valuable skill, I would have to say, in case like someone like Mango is very ingrained in town with their Mafia. So like skepticism from him is something I really value. All right. Was that it? Or are we going to go one more?
Let's stop it there. I think there are other players that we could talk about, but we've had such like star-studded games recently that we could talk about everyone really. But
yeah.
So all right, so we got a question here that says, "What makes you kill or save people night 1 as Mafia or Medic?" What's really cool is that the meta is kind of shifting in this way. I think where Mafia would usually try to like kill off the best players first. That also means that you know that the medic's probably going to be trying to save the best players first. So if you really want to be guaranteed a town kill, you might start doing those like good but not best players. But that also means that the medic's kind of aware of that. So that's kind of been changing as we go along, don't you think?
Yeah, I feel like the medic play is still like they're still trying to figure it out. So like Mafia and Medic are still in this little dance the first night of like who are we going to kill first and who's Medic going to save first, because I feel like Medic has been, I want to say Medic has been getting good saves like later rounds, so that's good. But the first night is always a weird dance. And Mafia has always gotten like a first night kill is pretty much in the past couple of weeks. So I feel like they're still figuring it out. I think that's more of a coin toss in terms of who you're gonna pick, because it's really dependent. Like you said, if it's like a really really good Mafia team, but it could really be anything. I mean, it's really hard. I think as Medic, it also depends on the person. Like they can also pick, the Medic will either pick the best person or just like a random person if they feel like the best person will be targeted like that.
You know, this is actually like what's kind of interesting about it is that, let me copy this out and put it in the chat. Okay, so what's really interesting is that now we're starting to play without a medic because we kind of think there's this more balanced game that talks about it's mostly it's all mafia, town, miller, cop, sheriff, right? So there's no medic to save. So you're kind of going after those strong players. But on the other hand, there's a lot of discussion that goes around that. Like if I kill off a really like a player that wouldn't really seem like he's not code S, he's not code A, he's like code B or code C player, then that's
in your mind. Everyone has their own ranking, but like in your
totally. But if I'm playing, if I kill off somebody who I think it was probably like kind of like a code B player, then all of a sudden everyone's kind of saying to themselves, well, who would kill off this kind of a player? But on the other hand, if you're a really good mafia player, it means that you can trust yourself a lot more. You can trust yourself more to be able to sway people against the strong players. So it depends.
Yeah. Okay, we got another question here. How do you feel about mafia rage quitting when cop accuses them, especially with the Miller? With the Miller, I don't think that's happened yet, but when a mafia rage quits after a cop accuses them, I feel like it's bad for the game. Just plain and simple, so.
Yeah, in all cases, you want to be engaged with the game as much as possible, and that just kind of stops you from being able to do that.
Yeah, and that also is bad for mafia, because that confirms the cop, pretty much. I mean, there's like, even though if everyone believes the cop, there's a slim chance that you could dissuade town, but just quitting like that pretty much confirms the cop. Which was funny, because last week, Jason came up as fake cop as town, and then accused Ribo, and Ribo just quit because I think he had to go, not like a rage quit. He just had to go, and then we all.
He was also Jason mafia. He was mafia with us, right?
Yeah, Ribo was mafia, so Jason got lucky, and we're just like, Jason's town, and that's what kind of screwed Phil over later in the game. But that's
what happened to the glasses, Peter?
We were talking about this a little bit earlier. Like what screwed Phil over is that everyone was so convinced that Jason was actual cop because he came out so strong early on in the game that when Phil finally came out and not Ribo, Ryan and I were on the chopping block, we were like, why would you come out, Phil? Because they're like, there's no way you're the real cop. Like, it doesn't make any sense at this moment. But it's him coming out that allowed us to do that. Because honestly, if he had stayed in, me and Ryan, the two last Mafia, were already on the chopping block. Like, he didn't need to come out. Like, it just didn't make sense. But
can anyone explain what a Miller is? So just really quickly.
Can't do that.
Oh,
I don't know anything about that.
Okay.
No,
well, we can talk about it. We can actually talk about when the game actually starts because we only got a few more minutes. Are there any other questions here?
Let's see.
Even I can, Is the only point of a Miller to produce a false positive to cops? Yes. So, I mean, we can talk about how the Miller balances the game. Like, the point of adding a Miller in the game is so when the cop gets a check the first night or second night or whatever night, there's a bit of uncertainty of whether or not they checked an actual Mafia Miller.
It just makes the cop less reliable overall. Yeah.
And the other thing is, it gives Mafia another defense to be like, oh, I'm just a Miller. You're obviously picking wrong. And the third thing is, like, there's a probability aspect. Like, if the cop checks the Miller the first night and comes out with a check, well, one, that's actually kind of terrible because he'll die the next night. But the other thing is, like, it's an 80% chance or something, or like a really high percentage chance that they actually got the right Mafia. So if you want to play the probability thing, we can go with that. But the Miller adds a very interesting dynamic in the game because it's another layer of deception, which I really like about Mafia.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, Mafia is a game of deception and trying to read your friends. Like, that's ultimately what it comes down to. And anything that takes away from that kind of sucks a little bit. Like, you don't want complete randomness, but a Miller provides that extra small layer that makes it a little bit more intriguing.
It's really about decision making because it's like you have option A and option B, and option A has probability A and option B has probability B. What does that say? Like, what risks are you willing to take given these two probabilities kind of thing? So there's one specifically for Unctious. It says, when you and Ryan won that game, or so surprised. Oh wait, this isn't even a question, but like, how were you feeling during the game last week when it was just you and Ryan left as Mafia?
From like day 2, I thought that we were gonna lose. I was like, everything has gone poorly. I feel like a shitty Mafia member because everything has gone completely wrong. There's no way we're gonna be able to stay in this. So I think Ryan and I both actually stayed way more quiet after that. We kind of chilled back and hoped that maybe somebody would bring something that we could jump onto, and then nobody did until Phil came along.
Yeah.
And when Phil came along, that gave us the opportunity to be like, no, you're just a Mafia member trying to clinch this victory last minute. Let's see. What else is here? You see any other good questions right off the bat?
The chat's moving pretty fast.
Is there any version of Mafia where people's roles are switched during the game's progress, such as after some number of nights, the Mafia get to convert somebody? No. I imagine that could be a thing, but I've never seen it.
What does the Batman do? The Batman fights for justice.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's all he does.
I mean, that's. Have you watched The Dark Knight or The Dark Knight Rises? Pretty much explained right there. What else? What else is there? Okay, I guess that pretty much wraps it up.
Where's
It
the
says, "Can I
score?
be any more American? I couldn't be more American if I tried." All right. Yeah,
That's
I mean,
about it, man.
yeah, that's like about it. So I think
Can we
this
talk about
gonna-
Carlton? All right, so we got like 2 minutes
Oh yeah,
left.
yeah.
I want to talk about Carlton because I think he's like an incredible player. What I love about Carlton is the fact that he is like somebody that you can count on late game no matter what. Like he calls out there was one round where it was me, Carlton, and like 2 or 3 other people left, and it was kind of left on me. I was like the confirmed town member, and it was kind of left on me to make a decision about who I thought should be voted off. I chose to vote off someone kind of random because I didn't have any good reads. And Carlton was like, "These 2 people are mafia. Why would you vote this other person off?" And I was like, "Fuck it, I'm gonna do what I want." And I voted for that person. And it turns out Carlton was fucking spot on.
Yeah.
He had it down to a science. That guy is really, really good, and he's tough to read because we let him be quiet early on.
Yeah, I mean Carlton. I'm interested to see it, like how much longer we can let him be quiet because Mafia will probably just kill him eventually, and he'll get tired of it. So we'll have to see. Do you feel that a player with good reads but bad arguments are detriment to the game? Really depends. Like it's
You need
also
to get used to their play style. Like it's
Yeah.
important for you as a town member to adapt to how they play. So no one's ever really like a detriment to the game unless they're putting things on a halt altogether. So if someone has good reads but they're like bad at arguing, you need to be able to say, all right, I'm not going to listen to anything they say other than their reads because I know that that's where like the important information lies.
Yeah, and it's also good to learn how to make a decent argument because bad arguments are usually signs that you're Mafia, like making stuff up on the spot. Even though it's not 100% true, that's just like kind of the standard we're holding it up to.
Yeah.
All right.
So I think that's going to just about wrap it up.
Yeah, we have 2 minutes left. Oh, what do you think the optimum amount of people to play Mafia is? I prefer 15.
I think 15 is a really good
14
number.
to 15, yeah, it's a really good number. Whose playstyle frustrates you the most? Quiet people. Yeah,
Alan.
quiet people and people who drag on stuff for longer than it has to.
Oh, also Storzerg for a little while. Storzerg made me want to die.
Yeah, well, we can just lynch him. Easy. Yeah, I mean, I feel like just people who try to drag on the game with like. Actually, last week, so I was actually getting on Mango's case. I was Mafia still, but I had a legit reason. Like, I feel like people who divide the town into this and this can be very dangerous, either as town or Mafia. But like, luckily for Mango, he's like completely spot on. But like, really dividing a town like off the votes, be like, oh, if they voted, they're definitely Mafia. I kind of like do not agree with because I don't pick up on 2 things. I don't care about who votes, and I don't care about slips. So like the one time Ryan said I'm 100% Mafia, like okay, he slipped up. Like that's fine. That happens to everybody. I don't think a proper lynch has ever been done on a slip.
Yeah, I don't think that's that good of a lynch either. Just those stupid slip ups. On the other hand, like everything in this game has 2 sides, right? As a Mafia player, on the Mafia team, I've tried to go out of my way to split the town into two parts, and then as a town, I've also tried to split the town into 2 pieces because I thought it was like a reasonable thing to do. So it's Shindigs was saying this earlier before we came on. Like everything in this game is context sensitive. It's so hard to talk about meta because everything changes once you get into the game. And what's crazy is like there's this idea in your head that it's easy to kind of read people when you're not playing, but then once you get into the game, everything changes and it feels so different.
Especially when you're Mafia. Like when you get into the Mafia seat, it's like you're hyper aware of like what you're doing and everyone else is doing. You're like, oh my god, am I too quiet? Am I too loud? Or whatever. Yeah. So that's at that point you really have to trick yourself through your town. I think we have to wrap up right now. So it's 6 o'clock, and I think that's going to conclude this week's Mafia Meta.
Definitely.
Let's go kill some Mafia right now.
Thanks for tuning in. Let's go ahead and get into the game.
esportsmafia.com to vote. Let's do it.
Thank you guys for doing this week's episode of Mafia Meta. We're going to take the stream down for just a moment so we can set up everything, and we'll be back in a minute or 2 with Mafia. See you guys then.